Hi, this is Steve Hargadon, and welcome to day 2 of Library 2.012. This is really fun. We've had a terrific first day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for being here. Thanks to San Jose State University for being a terrific to collaborate. This is a chance for you to let us know where you're participating from. Look for the star icon to the left of the whiteboard. It's the second one down. Double click on that and then click on the map. Maybe shout out in the chat. Let us know where you are. Time, temperature. Well, look at a nice diversity of location there.
Hello, it's me on the screen.
You would not believe how complicated it is to get all the time zones in the world lined up for the calendar, especially with daylight savings times. And I'm hoping we did okay in Australia, because Australia is always tricky. But thanks for being here, Australia, India, Brazil, wherever you're participating from, or if you're listening to the recording, thanks so much for being here. Okay, I'll turn the time over to the two of you.
Okay, thank you very, very much. What we're looking at is creativity and libraries, and because it's always nice to have a subtitle, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Go check out The Princess Bride if you've not seen it yet. However, oh, hi Mel. My idea is that in libraries, we use creativity a lot to justify what we do. More and more in library literature, when we talk about ourselves, we talk about stimulating the creativity of our community. I think in the future that's going to be an important role for us, but I think that at the moment we do not define it well, we don't measure it well, and we're not quite sure how to do it. I just had a request to speak up a little. Can people hear me okay?
Catherine, you might turn your microphone slider up a little. So above the talk button, there's a slider that you can turn up.
Yep.
You did go.
How's that? Am I much louder?
Yes, you are.
Is that better? No. Okay. So we use creativity. I don't think we use it well. Let's see if we can use it better is basically what we're saying. So this is me. I work at Curtin University. I'm an academic. So my approach is to try and pin down the butterflies. Okay, I want to define them, I want to understand them, I want to be able to classify them. However, although that's kind of interesting, I also wanted in this keynote to be able to show the butterflies being free. And so what I wanted to do is to be able to bring in somebody who's a practitioner, who could talk about why their library maybe has this type of thing flying around in it. And the best person for that was Mel Booth, I thought, who's the librarian, the university librarian at the University of Technology, Sydney. And if he wants to say more about himself, he can when it's his turn. Also, he may well say, yeah, that's very nice. We don't have to define it. We just do it, and this is how we do it. And that's the idea. Is I can say, well, we need to think about this, and Mel can just say, yeah, we do it, and it's cool. Okay, that's the idea of this keynote. So creativity and libraries, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. So when people start talking about creativity, when they have creativity in their briefs, when they have it in their publicity material, sometimes they're using it to mean innovation, entrepreneurship, artistic talent, flexibility, originality, critical thinking. Now, I don't think these are exact synonyms for creativity, but a lot of the times we mean quite different things each time we use the word creativity. So what I want to do is walk away from just those presumptions that people know exactly what we're talking about when we use creativity, the word creativity, and actually see whether we can have a better definition, and whether by defining it better we can measure and justify it better. So what I want you to do is go and get a pen and paper, or we can use this lovely down there, that chat box down there, to do this exercise. But what I want you to do while you're getting your pen and paper, and this is going to be 2 minutes of this time, so it's worth doing. What I would like you to do is think of a problem in your library. And it could be that you're tripping over the rubbish bin. It could be that there's going to be a homicide in your library if that problem person isn't brought in to check in the next week. It could be that you don't know how to provide ebooks for your community. It might be that you want to cancel your electronic subscriptions from a particular vendor. Okay, so think of the problem that's in your library. Okay, that's the first thing. If you want to write it down, write it down. Then the next thing is to look at this. An egg whisk. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do, an egg whisk, is to think about how is your problem like an egg whisk. Okay, we are going to come back to this, and I'd like you to actually think of some things, but what the exercise is that I'd like you to do in the next 2 minutes, and I'd love to see some things down in that box down there, is as many ideas as you can. They don't need to be deeply meaningful. They don't need to be all different from each other. Just as many ideas as you can in the next 2 minutes. How is your library problem or a library problem like an egg whisk? I'm going to sit back and let you do the work. So go. I'm typing some. Good stuff, I like that. It can be found just about anywhere, absolutely. No matter what angle you approach, you probably always end up with a mess. It's solid that you can see partially, but oh, I like that. That's looking at the physical aspects of it. There are holes in it. A technical upgrade can make it more efficient. You have to keep moving with it to keep it working. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I really like this. But what you can, okay, I used it tonight. Okay, so what you can see is that lots of ideas can come in, and all I wanted to do, all the requests there, and remember this for later, was I wanted you to spend 2 minutes working out how your problem was like an egg whisk. Okay, so let's go on to further. Okay, so one of the things that creativity can be about is about seeing connections where there weren't connections. And what I want to do is just take you through some of the connections that have happened for me in the last maybe 5-6 years of practice and of research that was where I didn't realize what I was interested in libraries. That sounds really stupid, but that can happen. And one of the things you might want to think about is whether one of the things that's driving you in your librarianship practice is around creativity. Because I didn't realize it was for me, and okay, and it wasn't like the egg whisk problem comparison. It wasn't until I was in an art gallery. I was at the Louvre. I was lucky enough to be there, and I was absorbing all this art and sculpture and drawing from all around the world, when I realized actually all the stuff I've been doing with libraries has been around creativity. What can I do with that? Okay, so one of the things that I'm really interested in is unconferencing. Okay, the idea that you come together and the participants make the session, just as when we just all got together and did some listing of problems, of solutions to problems, we all did that together. We all created something together. about 5-6 years ago. This was Second Life. We had a Second Life Island in the university I worked in, and this was one of my work days involved going to check out. We had students who were working for credit, developing the Second Life Island, and this was checking out somebody's underwater meditation grottos that she'd made with beautiful flowers. Okay, a wonderfully creative way to spend one's work day. One of the things that I did with some people in the library where I worked is 4 or 5 of us who were kind of techie, wanted to increase our skills. We made our own little skunk work. So what we would do is 2 hours every fortnight, we would work on something that interested us with an aim to increase our skills. So what we wanted to do was we did things like we made a LibX toolbar. We created an RSS feeds page, just little things which was designed to keep us interested. I did some work with open source software where I interviewed people who created and coded open source software and people who funded it. And I hadn't realized, of course, the thing that fascinated me about that was that the vendors had one solution, and what these people actually did, thank you, Mal, what these people actually did was they were creating a new solution, and that was the interesting thing. I've done some work around hackers and the hacker aesthetic and how we might apply it in libraries, and so I've done interviews and looked at some of the work of John Blyberg, who made his own open source discovery layer, Chris de Winter, who's Flemish, who's done some work with WordPress so that libraries could create their own home starting page that integrated with their library catalogue, Joe Ransom, who created Koha library management system, but also created something called Kitty, which is a way that the community can collaborate to share their digital content. Paul Hagen, National Library of Australia, in order to get to the, Mel's making me laugh with his comments. Okay, in order to get to the data, one of the things that Paul's done is he's looked at facial recognition. He's looked at whether we can use colour to identify and bring up all the purple pictures in the collection. So what I really found interesting about these people is the creativity that they were showing by making these solutions. And the final bit of work that I've done with Convibrams has been looking at sites like this. This is something called Library Pirate, which has been taken down now. Students didn't like what libraries did, didn't like the fact that they had to pay for their textbooks. They would scan them, they would have this exchange site where they would exchange, they'd say, I need this textbook, and others would supply it. Okay, so I hadn't realised, but actually what was the interesting thing around that was that people were being created around library solutions. So I guess one of the things that you might want to look at and that I wanted to start with is whether one of the things that stimulates or interests you about your practice is around creativity. But I want to go somewhere different today, okay? Where I want to go to is looking at library claims about creativity, looking at defining creativity and having a look at what researchers have said about creativity, looking at thinking techniques, because if we can actually develop these in our community, then we're going to be more likely to stimulate their creativity, and then finally look at why we should care. And then I'm going to hand over to Mel, who's going to say, well, this is how we do it, and he's got lots of really exciting things to show. Okay, so big claims are made for creativity, not only in library literature, but this is just one example where Richard Florida, who the Martin Prosperity Institute is actually a conglomerate of university research think tanks, but he tries to work out the most creative communities in the world and create the Creativity and Prosperity Index. Okay, and the way that he describes the importance of creativity is nations that invest in creativity and that achieve on the 3 T's, and I will talk about the 3 T's later, don't worry, of economic development, also have higher levels of human development, life satisfaction and happiness. Okay, so big claims being made about creativity. And if you're curious, this is the creativity map. I wonder if that matches the map that we did earlier with the little pinpoints. And in his creativity index, the last one that he did, the top 10 nations were Sweden, United States, Finland, Denmark, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Norway, Singapore, and the Netherlands. Okay, so not only can it be measured, it's really important stuff according to Richard Florida. I'm not sure I agree, but there are claims being made. Okay, not only governments, it's not only people like Richard Florida who are making claims about creativity. libraries are actually doing it too. And one of the really interesting things is when I went out to collect examples of libraries using the word creativity, it was just like shooting fish into a barrel. Like, I sort of scratched the surface a little tiny bit and all these examples came out of the woodwork. I am sure there are many more. Okay. What I'm talking about though is not staff creativity, not whether staff are creative in their job, whether libraries are a creative organisation to work in. What I'm interested in is whether libraries stimulate community creativity and when they make claims that they do. Now, one of the things that people, when they think about libraries and creativity, they think, well, we have story time in public libraries where kiddies do craft. So yes, there's creativity. But I think it's much, much broader than what we can offer. And we need to have some definitions so we can actually make that claim. In public libraries, they may think it's only story time. In academic libraries, they may think we're not in that business at all. Okay, I think we are, but we need to use some decent words to describe it. Okay, I am actually collecting examples. So this is my sort of side plea. If you see interesting examples of libraries using the word creativity, talking about how they stimulate creativity in their communities, there is my email address. Please send me examples. Okay. Making use of QR codes that link to online catalogue records. There you go. Creative example, but are they actually making a claim about creativity? Because if you look at these examples, you'll see they've used the word creativity, but so differently. About a month ago, the Public Libraries of New Zealand released a strategic framework, 2012-2017, and one of their key outcomes, cultural. Communities that value our heritage and embrace diversity and creativity. Okay, and not only that, in the report, it talked about and highlighted the Tasman District Library, which has spaces for creativity. Okay, they have a media lab where people can come and use the latest media. The State Library of Queensland has a separate facility. This is the very small facility down there. It's called The Edge, and if you look at the tagline for The Edge, exploring creativity. That's one of the things that The Edge does, and its purpose is, at The Edge, we aim to provide young Queenslanders with the opportunity and inspiration to explore creativity across the arts, technology, science, and enterprise. Okay, it's about exploration. It's about a space, okay? I'm not quite sure what they mean by creativity there or in the other examples, and that's what I think we need to be more specific about. New York Public Library celebrating 100 years, they had an exhibition. They had divided it into 4 different sections. The 4 sections were observation, contemplation, society, and creativity. The library's collections of materials in the arts encompass the rarefied and the popular, the classical as well as the avant-garde, and so on. Okay, so it talks about the collections of the creative element of the New York Public Library. Quite different to what The Edge was talking about. Last example, National Library of Singapore. Okay, they have information sheets about all the different public libraries that they run for their community. And within those, you've got the Chengshan Public Library, which claims the children's section is decorated around the concept of a garden designed to pique young children's interest and stimulate their creativity. And at the Bukit Batok Public Library, the children's section is decorated with colourful animal cartoons to attract the children's interest and to inspire creativity. Okay, big claims being made, really interesting claims. What do I mean? Jurong Regional Library, quite different. They don't have decorations. What they're doing is something quite bigger. What they're doing is the library serves as an urban development model for a creative, entrepreneurial, vibrant, culturally rich and technologically savvy community. One of its objectives is to identify and catalyse projects to promote the fusion of the arts, business and technology. So that's an important element. So as to unlock the collective creativity of the community and to achieve a new level of connectedness. Okay, very big element in their plan there. How are we going to measure it? The library at the Esplanade is a specialised art, music, drama library in the central city. They aim to support creativity, learning and entertainment for a broad range of users, from casual browsers to students, teachers, arts professionals, administrators and practitioners. So rather than interfacing with technology and making better collaboration, these guys are going to use creativity with learning and entertainment. Okay, we need to be using creativity as more than just a buzzword, I would argue. And one of my arguments about how we need to do that is to have a look at how creativity researchers have looked at defining creativity. And if we actually know what they think creativity involves, then maybe when we're making claims about increasing community creativity, we actually know what aspect we're talking about. And for the next little while, what I want to do is have a look at definitions of creativity and see how there's tools there that we can actually use to be a bit more specific. So Ward was the first person in English to really use the concept of creativity. Okay. What I want is 3 brave souls to actually put down what year do you think the concept of creativity appeared in the English language? I'm not going to move on until there's 3 dates down there. $1600, okay. 2006, thank you, Mel. And 1850, Renee, and 1439. Got us over 1600. Okay, so okay, that's more than 3. Okay, it was used in a work about drama until the death of Queen Anne. So it was actually 1875. So it wasn't until 1875 creative was used a lot, but the concept of creativity as an essence was actually used then. So it's actually a relatively new concept, which I find very, very interesting. I hadn't realized that. But so anything that we're talking about creativity is really, we've been making it up since 1875, which isn't really that long. Okay, so what is it? Anyone who wants to do anything with creativity, the place to go to, the person to look at is this bloke, who is Csikszentmihalyi. Okay, you get a degree in creativity studies if you can say his name. You probably remember him mainly because of his name, but his idea is he does research into flow, which is the idea that when you're using all your facilities, you're immersed in something, time just drops away. It's one of the most highest states, one of the highest states that people can be in, one of the states to which we should aspire. And he very, very much sees creativity as a way of reaching a state of flow. Okay, but his definition of creativity is any act, idea, or product that changes an existing domain, or that transforms an existing domain into a new one. Pardon? Okay, so while that's kind of interesting, the definitions around creativity have basically 3 elements that they talk about. And it takes it back to bare bones, and I know that when Mel talks, he's going to talk about how it's sparky and stimulating and fun. And I'm actually doing the academics, so let's really pin down this definition stuff. Okay, so please don't forget that it's actually a lot more fun than some of this creativity research makes out. But one of there's 3 elements. The third one, about 70% of the definitions talk about. So the first thing is that it needs to be novel. And novel is all very fine, but if one walked around one's library trying to solve problems with egg whisks, one would be being novel, but I don't think one would be being very creative. The second element that's necessary, that's in all the definitions of creativity, is useful. Okay, so creativity involves creating novel, useful ideas. However, this example shows that there's actually another element. Okay, in the 1950s, people were doing research into creating a rubber substitute, and they mixed boric acid and silicon oil, and they come up with this. Okay, this is something that bounces when you roll it into a ball. If you hit it, it will shatter. If you just leave it on something, it will trickle down. Goop? Not goop. Silly putty. Okay, 1 point to Maureen. Okay, so this is silly putty, but when they created silly putty, which is a wonderfully successful toy, they were trying to create a rubber substitute. So you wouldn't call it a creative act, it was kind of a nice accident. So the other thing that's essential when you're talking about creativity is that the idea needs to be fit for the purpose. Okay, so novel, useful, and fit for the purpose. So that's just a very baseline when we're talking about creativity, which, you know, it has elements of innovation in there, but it's actually talking more about new, useful ideas. Okay, where can we go with this with the library? Okay, one of the really useful ways of looking at creativity that I like very much is in identifying creativity, they talk about domains of creativity. And Mooney, 1963, was one of the people who uses this. And the matrix that she looks at is, place, product, process, and person. And I'll talk a bit more about those because I think they're important. Okay, so the first idea around creativity is a creative place. And the idea is that maybe an art gallery is a creative place, or indeed, libraries are a venue. Okay, so maybe when we're talking about creativity, one of the things we really mean when we're talking about creativity is that we have a creative place, a place that's likely to make people feel creative. So I think that when the New Zealand Public Libraries were using these spaces for creativity, they were really talking about libraries as creating a creative place. The same with the Edge, where they've got the venue, and the same with those pretty decorations in Singapore where, just having the mushrooms is going to stimulate the creativity. Okay, so what you're talking about is, if in that case you're trying to create a creative place, it may well be that one of the useful things to count is feet coming in and out of the door, because you're actually measuring the effectiveness of the place. But I don't think feet coming in and out of the door is really the statistic that's the be-all and end-all that we seem to be using at absolutely everything. Okay, but maybe if you're looking at, is this a creative place, that's a good stat to use. Okay. The next domain is to look at the creative product. So this is the idea that we took photos today. We were creative. We made a something. Okay. And it may well be that the focus in libraries has been on us as warehouses and storehouses of creative product, okay, of the fact that we've got the Devil's Wears Prada on our shelves. But we might also do this, and this is purely there so that I could get this photo into this presentation because I love it. Okay, so what this is from an edible book competition in one of the libraries, and what they've done is they've made their users create something, create a product. And in this case, it's an expression of the Devil Wears Prada, which is a cake. Okay, but what they've done is they've actually had a product that they want people to create. And, it may well be that knitting circles are doing the same thing. It's creating somewhere where people are expected to make a creative product. So in this case, I think when the New York Public Library is talking about creativity, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about how they have Mary Shelley's Frankenstein original and the graphic novel. The third way of looking at creativity is this process. And this is when we think about this, okay? Yeah, the kids are going to go home with that lovely little hat and they'll put it on the fridge or on their heads or something. But actually what is being offered to the children here, I think, is they're being taught skills and being given space and a time to have creative process. And if that's what we're actually talking about when we're talking about creativity, you can get various different measures to just people walking through the door. And that's what we need to start thinking about. If we're talking about creativity, what type and what domain do we mean? Okay, and I think that when in New Zealand Public Libraries we're talking about communities that value our heritage and embrace diversity and creativity, they're actually talking about process. I think that that's what the Edge is doing when they're wanting to have a lot of programs around creativity for their young people. And I think the Jurong Public Regional Library and the library at the Esplanade in Singapore, all making quite lofty claims about all this connection they're going to do and how creativity was an important part of it. That's what I think they're talking about. They're talking about relating to, when it talks about the fusion of the arts, business and technology to unlock the collective creativity, what I think they're talking about, or could, if they used some more precise definitions, is they could be talking about how what they wanted to encourage is novel and useful ideas for the arts, business and technology. And maybe some thinking techniques around getting people to generally think in ways that will make them more creative in these kinds of domains. And this is what we need to start thinking about, I think. Okay. The final way of looking at creativity is around person. And this is because a lot of creativity studies comes from psychology, where they use psychometrics a lot to try and work out whether they're the creative person and whether if you do this in the environment or paint the walls blue or in a coffee shop rather than in a quiet library, I don't know if people saw that study, that people are going to then suddenly be more creative. So they're actually looking at creativity as a personality trait. And a great example of this is these guys. This is from the last ALA conference. this person here is Amy Tan, the novelist. All these people performers that perform as the rock bottom remainders. They're probably better writers because they're quite well-known writers than they are singers. But the idea is that maybe within communities there are people who are particularly creative, and if our libraries can be a place for those people to meet where there's more and more creative people together, maybe that's something libraries can offer. I like that too. Okay. Another way of thinking about creativity is big C or small c, and that sounds really kind of Dr. Seuss. But often when governments are talking about, we're going to sponsor the arts to increase creativity, what they're talking about is big C creativity. And big C creativity, identified by FASCO, is historical. Okay, the idea that it's something so mind-numbingly a showstopper in life that it changes the face of the domain that it's in. So something like painting the Mona Lisa is historically creative, or something like Falling Water, Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water, is such a landmark act of novel usefulness that it becomes historically creative. And that's what people are often talking about when they're talking about stimulating creativity. They're talking about beating other countries at doing this kind of thing. Okay, so maybe this library at Delft in the Netherlands, this is the TU Delft library, which is sort of burned into the earth, and the students have picnics on the roof, which I think is really cute. But maybe that's an example of historical creativity. But I think maybe in libraries, what we're looking at more is small c creativity. And small c creativity is everyday creativity. So it may not be mind-breaking for all humanity, but for that person's life it makes a difference. And I think that's probably an important role that libraries can have if we can just work out how to use it. This is just an example of it being used, of small c creativity. I worked in a library, we had Visionware self-checkout software. Every time somebody made a mistake, it went and nobody really noticed, and they just kept trying to check their books out. Staff didn't notice, and people were getting frustrated because they weren't getting their books. So at a staff meeting, we remembered this. Okay, anyone recognize that? It's the board that we had it in Australia, and I know they had it in the US. It's the board from Family Feud. Whenever somebody made a mistake in Family Feud, it always made a ba-bow noise. And luckily, what we discovered is somebody had uploaded to the Internet Archive the ba-bow sound. So all we needed to do was download it. We changed the sound file in our self-check software, and suddenly people were paying attention. It was a polite noise. They knew what it meant, and they actually paid attention, and the problem was gone. So that's just an example of small c creativity. And it may be that one of the things when we're talking about stimulating creativity for our communities, we're not talking about getting everybody able to paint the Mona Lisa. But maybe what we are talking about is getting people to be more able to solve their day-to-day problems in a way that doesn't create things. Steve's just giving me a time check. Yeah, I'm taking more time than now, so I'm going to just quickly go through a bit more. Okay, counting. One of the things that when Richard Florida was talking about those 3 T's, what he was talking about was technology, talent, and tolerance. So it may well be in order to make our communities more creative, we need to provide the technology, we need to stimulate the talent of our community. And tolerance is a really interesting one that has its own book to be written about it. But the idea is that if you create a society where more things, more ways of being in it are accepted, people will be more creative because they can look at things differently. So this goes way widely to ethnicity, to understanding different lifestyles. So actually it may well be that by stimulating, one of the ways we stimulate creativity in our community is actually by creating a more tolerant community. Okay, creative thinking tools. I'm going to go very quickly through these. Okay, Sternberg 2012 talked about to be creative, one must first decide to generate new ideas, analyze these ideas, and sell the ideas to others. Okay, so with creativity, one of the important factors is divergent thinking, and that's what we were doing before when we had the egg yolk. Okay, the idea of divergent thinking is that people who are creative are able to see a lot of different ideas. Not only that, they may be able to see a lot of things and work out where the problems are. So divergent thinkers are able to have a lot of different ideas, but that needs to also have convergent thinking with it. So you need to have somebody, maybe some creative thinkers, are able to give out those ideas. So it may well be that in order to stimulate creativity in our community, this is the type of thinking practice that we need to help our community to have. Okay. One of the other things that I want to quickly look at is making new associations. And again, it's just a excuse to put 4 really funky images. Okay, so with the egg whisk problem exercise that we just did, we were looking at putting 2 elements that don't usually go together. And that's an example that's being done with the concepts of sleeve and face to create sleeve face. Okay, now sleeve face has very simple rules, but what people do within that is quite remarkable. Okay, so this is an example of sleeve face. What people do is they take album sleeves, they put it over their face into real life. But what I find really interesting is there's very simple rules. It's a very simple idea that people might not have thought of on their own. But once you put those concepts together, only really interesting things start happening. And it may well be that by combining things that don't usually go together, you know, bringing in the person who teaches you how to shoe horses may well make people have really interesting ideas. So this is Diamond Dog, another Bowie, and this one's really particularly cute. Another example of sleeve face. Okay, selling new ideas is an important part of creativity, and it may well be that one of the things that we do for our communities is teach them how to communicate their ideas to people who are then receptive to them, because it's no good having ideas if you can't actually sell them. Okay, Mel, I'm going to hurry up. I'll speak through. Okay, my last question is stimulating community creativity an important part of what libraries do? I'm not going to argue for it. I actually think it is. But if it is, then what I think we need to do is consider place, product, process, and person. And instead of having the focus that we have had a bit on place, a lot on product, is maybe change the focus so that we actually have much less on product, which is kind of hard for libraries to let go of, and look more at place, process, and person. And if we actually take that on board, then I think there's 3 questions that we need to ask, which is we need to know how to talk more about creativity, we need to know how to add it to the aims of what we do, and we need to know how to measure it. And now I'm going to let the butterflies flow free and move over to Mel. Cheers.
So, Mal, remember I turned your microphone off. You have to turn it on just by clicking on the talk button. Sorry, try again there.
Okay, so we're back on. I'm going to go pretty quickly through this now. That's me. That's Catherine's credits. So I'm talking about creativity in academic libraries. Let's get straight into it. I'm going to cover what, why, how, and who very briefly, because Catherine didn't leave me enough time. Anyway, with the what, and these are the whats that I'm going to cover, and I'll illustrate most of these. So it is the what, it's what creativity is, but it's also, it relates to some of the evidence. I'm not really sure that you can measure creativity. I come from a museum background, and I guess we had to measure it in museums, but I'm not really of that sort of culture. So some of these things we're going to talk about. The reason I think it's important in any library, particularly academic libraries, is because we're not really doing much of it, and I think it has huge effects on the workplace. So I see creativity as very healthy work, and for us, it's very much a work in progress, but we're making progress against all of these individual words that you see there as a creative work. So in a way, I kind of disagree with Catherine. I think it's important to do it on the inside as well as facilitating it or stimulating it with your clients, because you need that credibility. You need to actually understand the creative process. So in order to curate, I think you need to understand the creative process, and that's where all of these sorts of initiatives come in. So this was just a quick listing of the sorts of things that areas that we're being creative, and I'm hopefully going to go through and illustrate those now. So without further ado, we'll even get to theft. Here's and I keep pressing the wrong key to go forward. So we're doing lots of, in Australia it's the National Year of Reading, so we're doing lots of free author talks to get creators in to talk about their work and in front of the students, in the student space, so we're not locking away in rooms. This was Kristen Tranter. We've recently commissioned our first artist in residence. I think we're the only academic library to ever have had an artist in residence in Australia. This was his small exhibition, and could Steve now run the quick 1 or 2 minute film that introduces that work?
Yes.
This is a short Vimeo film.
1 second.
I was really impressed with Chris's conceptual work about discovery, and this just shows you some of the work. And he's talking about different ways of discovery in library collections and different ways of looking at a library collection in ways that I've never seen anyone else do. Chris Gore was the artist.
So everybody will need to click play for that to play.
Okay, I'm going to click play now. Seems to be getting stuck.
So now
okay, yeah. I think there were some problems with the film getting stuck, but you get the general idea. If you put Shelf Life into a web browser, you can find out more about it. There's a fair bit about it on my blog and the ALIA online blog, including some more films of the works, so I won't explain it further. But it was conceptual work exploring the nature of artistic creativity with libraries. So moving on from there. And the film was produced by another UTS student. So we are doing a lot more displays and highlighting the value of reading in an academic library, because not everybody who comes there is actually able to read. So we're learning a fair bit and stealing ideas from public libraries who do a lot of these sort of basic literary programs. We've run fun days, play days for first-year students to get them to creatively embrace the library. This is a murder in the library. We've taken away the comment board, and as you enter our library through these front stairs, you'll see that big screen there is a Wallwisher screen, which creates a conversation between ourselves and the students rather than a culture of complaint. So sometimes the conversations are quite amusing. This one here says you should build a soundproof booth to shout in for when exam study gets just a bit too stressful and we need a release. And our librarians all answer this themselves. They don't put it through management. They just said, great idea, I'll submit a request, and I can't even read this myself. And for a cone of silence, interactivity, or something like that. The conversations just continue. We've had requests to build how to build Death Stars. We engage with all of those things, and very rarely get content we really have to censor. So it changes the nature from a complaint book to a conversation between ourselves and our clients. This is this is part of our special collection development. This is some of the beautiful work of Dr. Kate Sweetapple, which maps those people with bird surnames against the map of Sydney with addresses plotted from the phone book. She's also done fish surnames and constellation surnames and other works in the library, including those flying books that you saw earlier. We've had a creative work examined in the library. So this was a Doctor of Creative Arts who put this concept together of the one-horned human, a virtual fossil from our future that had a representation of the digital desire to be living online. And he was examined for his doctorate and got it by his work being displayed on several floors of the library in many different forms of media, including our display cases. We run films. We're running this one at the moment, Psycho, coming up. It's advertised on our website and all the way around our library. It's kind of a cult film, as many of you would know. We have our own YouTube channel, so one of the key things about, as I said, about understanding creativity is understanding how to create, and that's what the YouTube channel is all about. We provide short videos in various formats to help with all forms of digital literacy and assistance in how to use the library through that channel, a dedicated channel. We're one of the first to do that. So we've learned a lot. One of the small steps we've taken was learning how to use social media. This is some sustainability initiatives that were created by staff at the team leader level. We had a facilitator come in to help us from an organisation called Zoomio, a designer, and those were the three initiatives they came up with. We run a reading club and a blog to help with that. This is the blog. As I said, to assist with reading in all sorts of different environments. We have another blog to assist researchers that provides a hell of a lot of useful information if they bother to look. We also use Facebook, and this is another thing dedicated for researchers, for PhD students, called Shut Up and Write. It's one of the ideas that we stole from another university, but not a university library, interestingly enough. It's a very popular session run for researchers who are struggling with getting their writing started for their PhD, where they enter a room for 2 hours, we run a little bit of homework for them, and then they basically just shut up and write, and it's extremely popular. We run a research week where we gather together collaborators from all over the university to assist them in exposing all sorts of things that helps to make them famous and helps to save them time across our services, and it exposes ourselves individually to the university's research community. This is a collaborative work by Kate Sweetapple and Zoe Sadikierski, two researchers who looked at books with avian titles and then hung them in our central stairs and provided a guide to it. And it's a really beautiful work. I've photographed quite a lot of it, and that's if you put me and into Flickr, you'll find my photo stream, and you can Mal Booth into Flickr, and you'll find these things explained in that way. It's just a beautiful work, and they asked to use our central stairs for this exhibition because they knew we were interested in creativity and created this work for us. We didn't commission it. We didn't ask for it. They wanted to work with us and do this work for us. And to me, that's evidence that you are being creative because you're attracting creators around you and giving them space to be creative. So in a way, it's co-creation with your community, the university community, in this case, researchers. We also put student creative works on display. This is us collaborating outside the library with a thing called Bike Tank, which was a design thinking exercise that involved students, master's students, some undergrad students, and the community of Sydney, run regularly. It was a think tank that you rode your bike to, designed to help make inner city living better in Sydney, and we were one of the key long-term collaborators in that essence, where we learned a bit more about design thinking, the creative process, and what really a collaborative environment, a collaborative creative environment is like, and how it can flourish. This was in an old disused warehouse with bugger all furniture. It really was just an amazing experience. It had architects, designers, all sorts of community people, angel funders going along, and it was a fantastic exercise. We learnt quite a lot from doing it over a 10-week period in 2011. I keep using the wrong one. We're progressing right. This is a spatial experiment called Create Space, obviously, an old law seminar room that we quickly fitted out. We painted a whole wall white with whiteboard paint, and that's the UC Factory logo on it that encourages people to write all over it. We've got green glass whiteboards in there, interactive whiteboards as well, and some funky furniture that we learned a fair bit from. And it's fairly popular with the students as well. Another creative experiment. And the other thing that I'm going to quickly run through now is a branding exercise. So I think you can't just facilitate creativity if you don't look like you're creative yourself. So we hired some designers, including the artist in residence and a young guy called Tom Feathers, who was a graduate of our design school last year as our designer, and they've come up with a new visual identity for us, which I think is really beautiful. And this is, I'll quickly run through the slideshow of how it works. So it's based on a netted cube, the 12 nets of a cube, and it gives us a new identity that we're branding ourselves with now. So here we go. I'll just go back. That's the new logo, which does change, as you see, alongside the university logo, and we've sort of have tacit approval from the marketing communications unit to allow us to use this with the logo, which is quite unusual because they've seen this. The wayfinding signage, it could be used in an app, on our publications. It can be used as well, and in some of our handbooks and other collateral that we hand out for students. So I think this is really important. If we're going to engage with the students, we have to look like we're creative and be creative in a contemporary sense. So now on with the why, and these are just, as I said, it's a work in progress. So these are the things that we think are important, why you should play with creativity. I think it gives you a better understanding of the process. I've talked about that. It engages more strongly with your community. It allows you to engage more strongly with your community than just sitting there waiting for people to come to you for the resources you have, like the books, for example, or your website. It provides cultural change both within the library, and it helps to be assisting in cultural change within your community as a hub for community cultural change. It really is an environmental factor, and it creates a better environment to work in and a better environment for the students to study, to learn, to be inspired in. The branding, as I said, is important. We just covered that a bit before. It's fun to do. A lot of these initiatives, staff created initiatives. I didn't ask for a lot of these things to happen. We just gave them permission. We trusted them to play. And all of those initiatives that you saw before are relatively low in terms of investment, in terms of cost and risk. And people just knew they had permission and they were trusted to play in those spaces by organising those events or arranging those new services. We learnt a lot by doing it. By being creative, you learn a hell of a lot along the pathway. We do it in many ways because we can, and because it gives us credibility with the academic community. As we said before, they are writers and creators of their own academic works, and if they see us creating as well, we have a new creativity. And perspective, by that I mean that we see things differently. So we don't see, libraries often see heaps of reasons why not to do things. So being more creative gives you a different purpose, so you see how you can do things. And I think what Catherine said before in starting with the problem is slightly wrong, because in some ways you don't even need to acknowledge the problems when you are more creative, because the creative aspect can actually make the problem quite irrelevant, and you don't really need to deal with it. If you start with the problem, I think it's kind of wrong sometimes, always starting with the problem. This is a couple of slides about how our artist in residence has helped. This is how libraries normally think. I think we're rational, efficient, and logical. Artists are different, and they're emotive, intuitive, and questioning. They ask questions, as you'll see, that we don't ask of ourselves. So our artist, I think, has helped us to understand well beyond what we know or what we even think we know, and gave us that fresh perspective I talked about before with his new and original ideas. Here's a quote from Wired magazine just earlier last month, about artists asking those questions, from a guy called John Mader from the Rhode Island School of Design. It really affected me. It's a wonderful article, and it's still available online. If you put his name into Google, you'll find it. It's a really wonderful article to read about creativity, and art is a new differentiator for innovation. So here's some quick stuff on who and how to finish off. Who is basically everybody. So for an academic library, it's the students, the academics, all staff inside the library and even the academic staff, if you can get them involved as well. But we call academics what you call faculty in America. And external mentors. So we've got a number of external mentors across Sydney. I'll get to that in a moment. And co-creation means, not us versus them, just us or just them, but it's creating stuff together. These are the mentors that we're using to be creative. Zoomio helped us with sustainability. Digital Eskimo is a wonderful design firm in town who's doing some discovery work with us to assist the discovery layer with some good ethnographic user experience research. With planning, we've had assistance from ULab, a new design thinking lab within UTS that's modelled on D-School at Stanford. And for service design, we're using Meld Studios at the moment in understanding what we're going to do to provide services for the future. So finally, how to tell if you are being creative. I don't know that it's something you can really measure very well, but for us, the visits we're getting to our events, the participants in our events and what they do, how they participate, the views of things online, you can map the likes of things in Facebook, the remarks you get just in passing or the spontaneous feedback that you get, the comments that are put on things or made about some of the services you're delivering, the interest expressed in the library and in various ways by people wanting to collaborate with you in future, the requests for more or requests for less of things, the surveys we do, the momentum it creates by people just continually creating different things, the partners or the new partners you gather around you in creative ventures, and the invitations you get from academics to create things with them or to collaborate on research projects. Finally, I wanted to say that creative practice actually does require practice, constant practice, and in a library it requires a lot of trust, and I think we've tried to model that. So they're just my thoughts. That's what's worked for us. I'm not saying it's a prescription for everybody else, but that's certainly what Catherine asked me to do for this presentation. So over to Catherine and Steve now if there's any time. Is anyone here? Oh, good. Catherine's still there. Sorry, it was a bit dark.
I'm still here. I don't know that I have much more that I wanted to say, and I think we've reached time anyhow. So
run out of time.
Thank you, Mel, for your perspective, and for everybody for joining in and playing. And I think we're almost done, unless people had quick 2 minutes that they wanted to use to talk.
There's one or two questions there. Oh, we can maybe answer questions online after.
Yeah.
Someone asked something. How do you get... I don't know how to get this so I can actually read it properly.
How do you get the users to engage?
How do you get the users to engage?
Have you seen an increase in engagement?
Have you seen an increase in engagement in the library? Yeah, well, we just run a survey recently, a LibQual survey, and our results were a lot better than, and we had a lot more, we had 75% more users than we did last time when we did it in 2008. So more engaging in the survey and the results were more positive is an indication we just got today actually. And we are getting users to engage in some of the events, to engage with us in online, to we renamed a number of things, a number of services for researchers, and some of the older librarians weren't really happy when we started providing services called Shut Up and Write, Save Me Time, Make Me Famous. But the younger researchers certainly engage with those things and understand what they mean, so we're not using so much library language anymore. Are we off? Have we been shut down? I don't know what's happening here. Oh, I better just finish that off with a thank you to our designers.
I think we've just finished on time.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Okay, that was
Yay.
fun. Yay, yay us.
Thanks, Mel. I went a bit long, sorry.
No worries, yeah.